Welcome back again. The default behavior of when you swipe over a cell of a table view is to show you one button, and that button is primarily used for deleting the cell. In this lesson, I will show you how to add multiple edit buttons. So let's go into Xcode, and I'm going to start a new application, and I'm going to call this application Multiple Edit Buttons App. And this application is actually going to be a single view application, and I will add my table view within my view controller. So I'm going to go in here, say I have a table view, which is exactly up there. I'm going to add all the constraints for it, add all missing constraints. I will also have a cell for it. The cell, as usual, I'm going to give it a cell ID, and it's going to be the basic type. And then I'm going to go ahead and say my table view has both its delegate and data source set to the view controller. So they're all being fed from here. And finally, I'm going to have to add an outlet for my table view. So I'm going to come in here and say at IB outlet. I'm going to say variable my table view, which is of the type UITableView. And I'm going to head back into my storyboard, select my view controller. In the connections editor, I'm going to say my table view is this one. So now everything is connected together as if this was a table view controller, which is not in this case. I'm going to go back to my view controller. And as you can remember, for a situation like this, we need to conform to UITableView data source as well as UITableViewDelegate. And the moment we do that, we have to necessarily feed two methods into here. So the first method I have to implement is number of rows in section. And I'm going to say just return a static value of 10 at all times. So I have 10 cells in my table view. And the other one is cell for row at index path. This is the other function that I must have. And for this, I'm going to say let cell be tableview.dequeue reusing cell ID. And I'm going to say return this cell. And the only thing in between is cell.textLabel.text shows a static value of test. So that's all I have to do in here. I have to make sure that I have the two functions, number of rows and the cell for row. And now when we run the application, we should be able to see 10 cells that they all say test, just like this one. And now the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to see more than one button when we swipe one of the cells. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to have to add two functions or two methods of my table view. One of them is the one that we have done before, can edit row at index path, and the return for that is going to be return true because we want to be able to edit the stuff. The other one, however, is the edit actions for row at path. So I'm going to say edit actions for row. And this is the other function that essentially tells us what buttons you want to see for each of the rows. And of course, depending on the index path, you can customize it. But for now, I'm going to make it one for all of them. So I'm going to say let, and the first thing I want to do is I want to have a button that says more. So I'm going to say more button, which is becoming UITableView row action. And I'm going to have to build one using a style and a title and a handler. So the style of it, I'm going to go ahead and say, let it be the default style. The title of it, I'm going to say more, something like that. And the action for it, which essentially is a closure, I'm going to say action and index path. And then here you can do whatever you think you want to be doing. This essentially becomes the body of that button. If in here you want to print something, we could say print something or call another function or whatever that you think you would need to do when that button gets pressed. So let's go ahead and make another one. I'm going to copy this whole thing, say this one is actually called delete button. So we had the more and we also have the delete. And the delete button, it says delete, and it has a question mark. And then what I could do is I could change the color of both of these. I could go ahead and say more button dot background color becomes UI color dot orange, and I'm going to copy that for the delete button and say the delete button actually gets to be red because that kind of makes better sense. We finally have to return both of these. And that is very important because here, my function edit actions for row, it's expecting an array of UITableViewRow actions. So I've got two of those. So I'm going to go ahead and say, well, return both of those, more and delete. So I have an array of this button and this button. They both have some actions happening in them, and they're being returned for all of the index paths in this particular table view. So let's run the application, and if it all works well, we should be able to see two buttons appearing when we swipe each cell, and they should correspond to whatever we ask them to be. So now one of them is delete, one of them is more. Once again, one of them is delete, one of them is more. And that is how you add multiple edit buttons to your cells. Let's keep it up to here, and we'll move on to our next lesson.